So in this lecture, we will see the analysis of water, chemical tests. So which are the chemical There are many chemical contaminants in water, and we will see the chemical. We'll see the different test procedures which are used to identify the different chemical contaminants. So here there are almost 9 chemical contaminants. Out of that, we will discuss 4 today. Chloride content is a contaminant, dissolved gases, hardness, pH value, alkalinity, acidity, nitrogen and its compounds, metals and other chemical substances, total solids. So all these are the chemical components which causes chemical pollution in water. So we will see these 4 today, and we will first see the chloride content. The chloride content is actually it mainly occurs in the form of sodium chloride in water, and it can be caused due to these reasons: sewage, minerals, edible oil mill operations, ice cream plants, chemical industries, and seawater intrusion in coastal areas. So all these factors causes chloride pollution in water, and there is no evidence that it causes some health hazards in human beings. It can be of any permissible limits. We can use, for example, we can use up to 2000 milligram per liter of what is that chloride content in our water. The highest desirable limit is 250 and maximum permissible limit is 600 milligram per liter, even though we can use up to 2000 milligram per liter because it does not have any health hazards. But it is not aesthetically good. When the amount of chlorine content is higher in water, it will give a taste, a salty taste. It is not aesthetically good. So that is the disadvantage of this chlorine. Now we will use a chemical procedure for finding the amount of chlorine in water. That procedure is known as Mohs test, which is developed by a scientist known as Moore. It is a very simple procedure. It has only 3 steps. We have to take the sample of water first, then we have to add 2 to 3 drops of potassium chromate into that sample, and now we have to titrate the sample with silver nitrate solution. So the reactions occurring here is, so before that we'll see when should we stop the titration. The end point of the titration should be the first appearance of red brown color. Whenever the sample turns red brown for the first time, we have to stop the titration. So that is the thing. So now we can analyze from that. We can get the value of amount of chlorine, get the amount of chlorine which was present in the sample. The chemical reactions occurring here is given here. The silver nitrate first reacts with the sodium chloride to form silver chloride. This silver chloride reacts with this titrant. What is that? Silver potassium chromate. I'm sorry, indicator potassium chromate, and it will form silver chromate. So these are the things happening. Now, another disadvantages of chlorine is it causes erosion, and it cannot be used in boilers because it will form hydrochloric acid there due to the presence of magnesium chloride. So all these are some of the disadvantages of chlorine. It will not cause any, even though it will not causes any health effects, it have many other disadvantages. And before the test of chlorine, we have to make or adjust the pH between 7 and 8. Otherwise, the test results will be affected. So this is all about chlorine. Now, as a second component, we will move on to the dissolved gases. There are many dissolved gases in water actually. Normally, the gases present in water are nitrogen, methane, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. Nitrogen is not very important. Methane concentration is studied by its explosive property. When the water shows any explosive properties, we can say that methane is present in the water. Hydrogen sulfide, it is a very foul smell gas, and when it is present in water, there will be, even if it is in small amount, it will show a disagreeable odor. So we can identify the presence of hydrogen sulfide by that. Carbon dioxide indicates biological activities, causes corrosion, increases the solubility of many minerals in water. So from all these indicators, we can say that carbon dioxide is present in water. Out of all these gases, oxygen is very important. So we will move on to oxygen. More about oxygen. How can we test oxygen? We mostly test oxygen by means of a test procedure known as modified Winkler's method, which was developed by a scientist, a chemist known as I.W. Winkler, who is a Hungarian chemist in 1888. He has developed this method. It is otherwise known as iodometric method. So we can see whatever is the procedure here. So this figure shows the procedure of Winkler's method or modified Winkler's method. Mm, we will first take the sample. We will add 1 milliliter of manganese sulfide to it. After that, we will add 1 milliliter of alkali iodide azide into the sample. After that, we will shake it well. Then we will add 1 milliliter of sulfuric acid into it. Again, we will shake the bottle. Now we will transfer all these sample into a conical flask. We will add some starch indicator, 1 milliliter of starch indicator here for analyzing the change in color. We will add the indicator. After that, we will titrate, use this sample for titration. The titrant is sodium thiosulfate. Okay, so this is the procedure. First, we will add manganese sulfate, then alkali iodide acid is added, and then we will shake the bottle. We'll add sulfuric acid. Again, we will shake the bottle. Now we will transfer all the content to a flask. We'll add starch indicator. Now we will titrate it against sodium thiosulfate. So the procedure is shown here or summarized here. The principle behind this procedure is nothing but the dissolved oxygen has a tendency to react with the manganese ions and forms manganese dioxide. So the first reagent that we were adding was manganese. Here we can see the first reagent was manganese sulfate. So there is manganese present in that reagent. So the dissolved oxygen in water reacts with that manganese ions and form manganese dioxide. Okay, this manganese dioxide further reacts with iodine. The second reagent was iodine acid. So it will react with this iodine ion to liberate free iodine. It will liberate the iodine there. So this iodine, this amount of iodine released due to the titration between sodium thiosulfate with sodium thiosulfate can be taken as a quantitative measure of dissolved oxygen. Okay, so this is the thing happening here. First thing is the reactions are given here. First we will add the manganese sulfate. So at the time what will happen is the manganese sulfate has manganese ions in it. That ions reacts with the dissolved oxygen in water to form manganese dioxide. In the second step we will add alkali iodide acid into the sample. This manganese dioxide which is already formed reacts with the iodine to release the iodine. Reacts with the iodine ion and releases the iodine. Releases free iodine. This iodine, this amount of iodine is identified by means of titration with sodium thiosulfate. So it reacts with sodium thiosulfate to form again free iodine, which can be calculated as a direct measure of dissolved oxygen. So if the whole content is used for titration, we will use this equation, and when a small amount, that is the whole sample which we have taken here is used for titration, then we will use this equation. If some part of the sample is only taken for titration, then we will use this equation. So by using this equation, we will get the amount of dissolved oxygen. So this is the procedure of modified Winkler's method. Winkler's method. This table shows the permissible limits of dissolved oxygen in water. If the limit of dissolved oxygen is 8 to 9 ppm parts per million, then we can say that the water is of good quality. If it is less than 4.5, we can say that it is highly polluted. And also, the dissolved oxygen has a direct relationship, or no, not direct, inverse relationship with temperature. When temperature is higher, the dissolved oxygen will be lesser. When temperature is lesser, the dissolved oxygen will be higher. This graph shows this inverse relationship between oxygen content and temperature. Another important term which is related to the dissolved oxygen is biological oxygen demand. It is the amount of dissolved oxygen required to break down the organic material of the sample by aerobic biological microorganisms at certain temperature over a specified period of time. It is nothing but the amount of oxygen needed for organic decomposition of organic matter. So that is the thing. Amount of oxygen needed by the bacteria or other microorganisms in the water to decompose all the organic matter. That is known as biological oxygen demand. When the BOD is higher, it is a demand. Okay, when dissolved oxygen is lesser, demand increases, BOD increases. So when BOD is higher, it is not good for organisms in water. So BOD higher means dissolved oxygen is less. So it is not good for organisms. When BOD is lesser, that means sufficient amount of oxygen is there, demand is less. So it is good for all the organisms in water. So lower BOD indicates the water is of good quality. And BOD is a very important term. Since BOD is a very important term, it is a biological oxygen demand. So we have to have some test procedure for this BOD. A standard method which was developed by US Environmental Protection Agency EPA is followed here. So it is a very simple procedure. First, we will take two samples from the same source. For example, if you want to check the BOD content of a particular river, you will take two samples from the river, and one sample will be tested for DO, dissolved oxygen, by using the Winkler's method, which we have discussed earlier. One of the samples will be tested for DO. The other sample will be incubated in complete darkness at 20 degrees Celsius for 5 days. Second sample will be incubated in darkness for 20 degrees Celsius for 5 days. So after this incubation period, that sample is tested for dissolved oxygen. So we will get two dissolved oxygen quantities, one at the first and the other after 5 days. So the difference between two divided by volume of the sample will give the BOD in milligram per liter. So this is how we can calculate the BOD. Now here we can see the levels of BOD and how the water is affected by BOD. When BOD is very much higher, the water is contaminated. When it is 10 milligram per liter, the water can be said to be contaminated. And when it is 1 milligram per liter, the water is said to be very clean. And COD, chemical oxygen demand, it is a similar term like BOD. Chemical oxygen demand is nothing but it is the oxygen consumed to chemically oxidize the organic water contaminants to inorganic end products. So earlier the BOD was the biological oxygen demand, which is the amount of oxygen used for the decomposition of organic matter by bacteria or microorganisms. Here it is the chemical oxidation. Here chemical oxidation occurs and it is the amount of oxygen required for that chemical oxidation. So the principle of, there is a test for COD also, but it is not necessary to study that test. So see, the principle of the test is, if we add some oxidizing agent into the water, in the sample of water, under acidic condition, that oxidizing agent fully oxidizes all the organic compound to carbon dioxide. So this amount of carbon dioxide formed here can be a direct indicator of dissolved oxygen. So this is the principle of chemical oxygen demand test. Now we will move on to the third important chemical parameter, which is hardness. Hardness is nothing but it is the ability of the water to cause precipitation of insoluble calcium and magnesium salt or higher fatty acid from soap. It is nothing but when hardness is there, soap will not produce any lather. So that is the property of hardness. Hardness are of two types, temporary and permanent hardness. Temporary hardness is mainly due to the presence of bicarbonates of calcium and magnesium. It can be removed by boiling of the water. And permanent hardness is otherwise known as non-carbonate hardness. It is due to the presence of sulfate, chlorides and nitrates of calcium and magnesium. It cannot be removed by boiling. Some chemical procedures or analyses are needed for removing the permanent hardness of water. So we will see more about hardness. The hardness is directly related to alkalinity of water because hardness is caused due to the presence of bicarbonates of calcium, magnesium, etc. So bicarbonate means it is alkaline in nature. So alkali is directly related with hardness of water. Normally this hardness of water is caused by limestone and chalk. So limestone when reacts with water and carbon dioxide will produce this bicarbonate. So main reason for alkalinity is limestone or chalk. Now the total hardness of water is equal to the sum of carbonate hardness and non-carbonate hardness. Carbonate hardness can be sometimes called as alkalinity, not always, can be sometimes called as alkalinity. There are two rules for that. When alkalinity is less than total hardness, when the alkalinity of water is less than total hardness, then carbonate hardness is equal to alkalinity. When the alkalinity is greater than or equal to total hardness, then we can say that carbonate hardness is equal to total hardness. So this is a logical thing. So you have to read it twice for getting this idea. Okay. And the bad effects of hardness are it will consume more soap. It will affect the working of dyeing system. It produces scales on boilers. It causes sedimentation and creates some scales in boilers. It causes corrosion and incrustation of pipe, and it makes food tasteless. So these are the bad effects of hardness. And hardness is generally expressed in terms of degree. It is expressed in Clark's table of degree of hardness. 1 degree of hardness is actually 14.3 milligram of calcium carbonate in 1 liter of water. That is, hardness is generally expressed. Hardness is caused by many sources. It may be due to calcium, magnesium, or chlorides, etc. Different salts of calcium, magnesium, chlorides, etc. So, even though the hardness is generally expressed by means of calcium carbonate. It is mainly expressed by means of calcium carbonate only. So 1 degree of hardness is equal to 14.3 milligram of calcium carbonate in 1 liter of water. Otherwise, it can be expressed in ppm. 1 ppm is equal to 14.1 ppm is equal to 1 milligram per liter, which indicates that 1 degree of hardness is equal to 14.3 ppm. And 1 degree of hardness causes the wastage of 0.6 gram of soap. So there is a simple test for hardness. Hardness can be tested by means of a simple soap solution test. We will dissolve a soap in water and we will shake it for 5 minutes. After that, we can see lather in it. Lather will be formed. So hardness can be calculated by using this equation. Hardness is equal to total amount of soap solution which we have created here minus the lather factor. How much amount of lather is formed in that amount of soap solution. So this will give the hardness of the water. For potable water, the hardness should be preferably between 5 to 8 degrees. Here there is a table showing the hardness in degrees and the nature of water. When the hardness is too low, the water is extremely soft. Extremely soft water is not good for health. So water should be moderately soft. 6 is acceptable. So water should be moderately soft. It should not be that much soft or should not be that much hard. Okay. So I have already explained that hardness is normally expressed in terms of calcium carbonate. So hardness in milligram per liter as calcium carbonate is equal to the type of ion or the amount of ion into equivalent weight of calcium carbonate divided by equivalent weight of that particular ion. This ion may be calcium, magnesium or strontium. So these are the ions which can cause hardness: calcium, magnesium and strontium. So this may be anything: calcium or magnesium or strontium, the quantity of calcium, magnesium or strontium, and this is the equivalent weight of that particular ion. Equivalent weight is calculated by molecular weight divided by X. The definition for X is given here. Equivalent weight of calcium carbonate is 50. Equivalent weight of calcium carbonate is calculated as 50. So this is the equation used for finding hardness of water. And before finding hardness, we have to note certain points. First thing to be noted is when we analyze water, there may be different types of ions present in the water. But all the ions will not cause hardness. Only certain ions like calcium, magnesium, strontium, carbonate and bicarbonate. These are the 5 ions which can cause hardness. Others will not. If there are other ions in the list, we can ignore all of them. Okay, so that is the thing first we have to note down. Second thing is, the equivalent weight of calcium is 20, equivalent weight of magnesium is 12.2, and equivalent weight of strontium is 43.8. So these values you have to note. Third thing is, molecular weight of bicarbonate is 61 and molecular weight of carbonate is 60. This thing also you have to note before finding hardness. And when the alkalinity is expressed in terms of bicarbonate alkalinity into 1.22 will give the total alkalinity. If it is expressed in terms of carbonate alkalinity into 0.6 will give the total alkalinity as COCO3. So this equation you just ignore. We can see this while doing the problems. So these are the things to be noted before finding hardness. We will move on to the next parameter, that is pH, or otherwise it can be said to be the hydrogen ion concentration. It shows whether the water is acidic or alkaline. Okay. Actually our pure water consists of two types of ion. One is positively charged hydrogen ion and the other one is negatively charged hydroxyl ion. So two ions are there. So H plus OH minus will give H2O. Normally it is in a combined state. So in some sources, some cases, these ions will get dissociated. So H plus will be there, OH minus will be there. So these are seen separately. When the amount of H plus ions is higher than that of OH minus, then we can say that the water is acidic. When OH minus ion is greater than that of H plus, then we can say that the water is alkaline. And when both the ions are in same number, then we can say that the water is neutral. And the ionization constant of water can be expressed as Kw is equal to H plus, concentration of H plus into concentration of OH minus. A liter of pure water contains 10 raised to minus 7 gram of hydrogen ion and 10 raised to minus 7 gram of hydroxyl ion. So we can say that the ionization constant is 10 raised to minus 40. Okay, we can say that ionization constant of water is 10 raised to minus 14. That means 10 raised to minus 7 concentration of hydrogen ion and 10 raised to minus 7 gram of hydroxyl ion is present. The pH is normally expressed in terms of log scale. Okay, it is the negative logarithm of hydrogen ion concentration. This point you have to note down. pH is the negative logarithm of hydrogen ion concentration. It is minus log to the base 10 H plus, which is equal to 1 by log to the base 10 H plus. POH is also there. POH is equal to negative logarithm of OH minus ion. This is not that much needed, but this is very important. And the scale of pH is between 0 to 14. Mainly this pH will be in the range of 0 to 14. 0 to 7 pH indicates acidity. 7 to 14 will indicate basic nature or alkalinity. And 7 indicates neutral. So if the water is between 0 to 7, we can say that the water is acidic. If it is between 7 to 14, we can say that the water is basic or alkaline. And if it is 7, the water is neutral. For potable water, the pH should be between 6.5 and 8.5. So the pH should be between these values. It should not be that much acidic or that much basic. pH less than 4 will cause sour taste because it is acidic in nature, and pH greater than 8.5 will produce bitter taste because it is alkaline in nature. So these are some bad effects of pH which is given here that you can read. Now how can we measure pH? We can measure pH by means of two methods. One is electrometric method and the other one is colorimetric method. Electrometric method uses the potentiometer or electrical ability of this hydrogen ions. We will use a potentiometer here. It is used to measure the electrical pressure extended by the positively charged hydrogen ions. How much pressure is there due to the presence of hydrogen ion will be indicated by this potentiometer. That will give the pH. In colorimetric method, it is just like our litmus paper which we have studied in our plus 2 classes. So when some indicators will be there. Benzol yellow, methyl red, boron phenol blue, or for alkali, thymol blue, phenol red, toluene red. These are some indicators. So using these indicators, we will find whether the water is pH, water is having acidic pH or basic pH. So it will show some color changes, and from that we can identify whether it is acidic or basic. So there are two methods, electrometric and colorimetric method. So this is about today's lecture. Thank you.